Daughter sends selfie. While camping with grandparents, mom zooms in and starts to panic. Picture this. You're scrolling through your phone and a notification pops up. It's a selfie from your 5-year-old daughter, sent while she's camping with her grandparents. You smile at first. She looks so happy, her blonde curls framing her cherubic face. But then something catches your eye in the background of the photo. A man. Not just any man, but someone who sends chills down your spine. Someone you thought was out of your life forever. That's exactly what happened to Lydia Heron. And let me tell you, it turned her world upside down. Lydia is like any other mom trying to balance work and family. She's been juggling spreadsheets for an important project, hoping to land a promotion, all while missing her little girl, Hazel, who's away on a camping trip with Nick's parents, June and Charles. The house feels too quiet without Hazel bouncing around, asking questions about everything under the sun. Lydia tries to focus, but her mind keeps wandering back to that selfie. Something about it doesn't sit right, and when she zooms in on the man standing behind Hazel, her blood runs cold. This isn't just paranoia, it's a nightmare come true. You see, Lydia has a past she's worked hard to leave behind. 5 years ago, she escaped an abusive marriage to Caleb Winters, a man who once choked her while she was 8 months pregnant. He went to prison for domestic violence and drug charges. And Lydia thought she'd finally found peace with Nick, Hazel's stepdad. Together, they've built a loving home, fought addiction demons, and created stability for their daughter. But now, seeing Caleb's familiar jawline and those chilling eyes in the background of Hazel's innocent selfie, Lydia knows her past isn't done haunting her. The tension builds as Lydia realizes Hazel might be in danger. Her hands tremble as she calls June and Charles, only to get no answer. Panic sets in. What if Caleb isn't alone? Who else could be with him? And why would he target Hazel after all these years? These are the questions racing through Lydia's mind as she frantically grabs her car keys, ready to do whatever it takes to protect her child. But here's the thing. Lydia isn't perfect. Far from it. She's carrying secrets of her own, secrets that Caleb knows and threatens to expose if she doesn't comply with his demands. Secrets that could destroy everything she's worked so hard to build. Nick, Lydia's supportive husband, senses her distress immediately when he finds her staring at the bathroom cabinet where she keeps her prescription pills. He steps in with a mix of concern and firmness. You promised, he reminds her gently, knowing how far she's come in her recovery journey. 4 months. Clean. That's no small feat, but Lydia's anxiety is skyrocketing, and the temptation to numb the fear is overwhelming. Still, she resists, for now, because Hazel needs her mom to be strong, to be present, to fight for her. As Lydia and Nick speed toward Trinity Pines Campground, the story dives deeper into themes of motherhood, sacrifice, and redemption. We meet June and Charles, Hazel's doting grandparents, who describe how a charming stranger named Collins befriended them during the trip. Little did they know, Collins wasn't who he claimed to be. By the time they realized something was wrong, Hazel was already gone, taken by Caleb and his accomplice, Maya. The police are involved now, searching for the camper van and questioning witnesses. But Lydia can't shake the feeling that time is running out, and then the call comes. A number Lydia doesn't recognize. On the other end is Caleb himself, calm and calculating, laying out his demands. He wants Hazel's documents. He wants custody. And if Lydia doesn't cooperate, he'll make sure everyone knows the truth about her past. The embezzlement scandal, the drugs, the lies. Every word he says cuts deeper than the last, leaving Lydia trapped between 2 impossible choices. lose Hazel to Caleb, or lose her to the justice system when her crimes come to light. What makes this story so gripping isn't just the suspense of whether Hazel will be safe. It's the raw humanity of Lydia's struggle. Here's a woman who's made mistakes, big ones, but who loves her daughter more than anything. Watching her wrestle with guilt, fear, and the weight of her decisions pulls you in, making you root for her, even as you wonder if she'll make it out unscathed. Will she give in to Caleb's threats? Can she trust the police to help without ruining her chances of keeping Hazel? Or will she find the strength to face her past head on and fight for her family? As Lydia races against time, we're left hanging on every twist and turn. From the quiet desperation in her voice when she begs Caleb to let Hazel go, to the heart-stopping moment when she realizes the truth about Caleb and Maya's twisted relationship. The stakes keep rising, and just when you think things can't get worse, Lydia discovers something that changes everything. A piece of evidence that could turn the tables on Caleb. But will she act fast enough? Or will Caleb's plans spiral out of control before she can stop him? This story isn't just about survival. It's about courage, about finding the strength to confront your darkest fears and choosing to do the right thing, even when it costs you everything. Lydia's journey forces us to ask ourselves, what would we do in her shoes? How far would we go to protect the people we love? And most importantly, can we ever truly outrun our past? But I won't spoil it for you. Right now, Lydia stands at a crossroads, torn between protecting Hazel and saving herself. The clock is ticking, and every decision she makes could mean life or death for her family. So, what happens next? Stay tuned to find out, because this is one story you won't want to miss. Lydia's mind raced as she tried to piece together how Caleb had found them. The last 5 years had been a blur of therapy sessions, recovery meetings, and rebuilding her life with Nick. She'd thought those dark days were behind her. The nights spent drowning in alcohol and prescription pills. The lies she told to cover up her embezzlement. The fear that gripped her every time Caleb came home angry. But now, it felt like the past was clawing its way back into her present, threatening everything she held dear. Nick noticed the change in her demeanor immediately. He'd always been perceptive, especially when it came to Lydia's struggles. "What aren't you telling me?" he asked gently, his voice laced with concern. Lydia hesitated, guilt twisting her stomach into knots. How could she explain what she hadn't even fully admitted to herself? That Caleb wasn't just some random stranger in Hazel's photo. He was her ex-husband, Hazel's biological father, and a man who had once nearly killed her. The memories flooded back unbidden. The night Caleb had cornered her in their old apartment, his hands tightening around her throat until black spots danced before her eyes. She'd been 8 months pregnant with Hazel then, defenseless and terrified. It was only the timely arrival of the police that had saved her life. After that, Lydia had fought tooth and nail to escape him. Through divorce, through testifying against him, through moving cities and starting over. But no matter how far she ran, Caleb's shadow lingered. Now, seeing his face in Hazel's selfie, Lydia knew he hadn't forgotten about her, or their daughter. His presence at the campground wasn't coincidence. It was calculated. And if Caleb wanted Hazel, he wouldn't stop until he got her. The realization sent a fresh wave of panic coursing through Lydia's veins. As they sped toward Trinity Pines campground, Lydia wrestled with another layer of dread. If Caleb was willing to kidnap Hazel, what else was he capable of? Was Maya involved too? Lydia remembered the elegant woman June had described, the one who played with Hazel and told stories by the campfire. What kind of person would help Caleb take an innocent child? These questions gnawed at her. each answer more horrifying than the last. When they arrived at the campground, the scene was chaotic. Police cars lined the parking lot, their flashing lights casting eerie shadows on the trees. Officers questioned campers, while rangers combed the area for clues. Lydia spotted June and Charles, sitting at a picnic table, their faces pale and drawn. Charles held an ice pack to his temple, and June clutched a tissue in trembling hands. "They're gone," June whispered as Lydia approached, her voice breaking. "He took her right out from under us." Lydia's heart sank. Who? Who took Hazel?" Charles spoke next, his voice shaky but steady. "A man named Collins. He befriended us, earned our trust. We thought he was harmless." His gaze dropped to the ground, shame flickering across his features. But this morning, after breakfast, Hazel begged to go play with him again. They promised not to go far, just to pick flowers or something. I didn't see them leaving until it was too late. Lydia listened, her chest tightening with every word. This was her worst nightmare come true. Caleb had manipulated her in-laws, charmed his way into their lives, and used their kindness to get close to Hazel. And now her daughter was out there, alone with a man who had already proven himself capable of violence. Detective Rollins stepped forward, his expression grim. "We've issued an Amber Alert for Hazel and are coordinating with local authorities. Several witnesses reported seeing a camper van, matching the description heading toward town, not up the mountain as we initially suspected." Lydia nodded absently, her mind spinning. Town meant Oak Ridge, where Caleb's sister owned the Sunshine Cafe. Had he planned this all along? Was he using Maya as part of his scheme? The pieces fit together too perfectly, like a puzzle designed to trap her. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, startling her. An unknown number flashed on the screen. Lydia hesitated, her instincts screaming danger, but curiosity and desperation won out. She stepped away from the group, finding a quiet spot near a cluster of pine trees. "Hello," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Keep your voice down and listen carefully," a familiar voice said, sending chills down her spine. It was Caleb. In the background, she could hear Hazel chattering excitedly, oblivious to the danger surrounding her. "Caleb!" Lydia hissed, her free hand curling into a fist. "What have you done? Where's Hazel?" "She's fine," Caleb replied, his tone eerily calm. "She's having the time of her life, actually. Aren't you, sweetheart?" His voice softened as he presumably turned to speak to Hazel. Lydia heard her daughter's cheerful reply, the innocence in her voice shattering whatever remained of Lydia's composure. "Caleb, please," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "Don't do this. She doesn't even know you." "That's exactly the problem, isn't it?" Caleb shot back, his voice hardening. "My own daughter doesn't know me. 5 years of her life gone. Time I'll never get back." Lydia swallowed hard, forcing herself to stay focused. "You have no right." "I have every right," Caleb interrupted. "I'm her biological father. Now listen closely. I don't want to hurt Hazel. I didn't take her to harm her. I just want to talk. You and me, we have unfinished business." Lydia's blood ran cold. "Why should I believe you? You planned this. You knew she'd be here with my in-laws. Why would I trust anything you say? If you don't come alone, if you tell the police or that husband of yours about this call, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of mother you really are," Caleb threatened, his voice dropping dangerously low. "I'll tell them everything, Lydia. Every dirty little secret." Her knees nearly buckled beneath her. She leaned against a tree for support, her mind racing. Caleb knew about the embezzlement, the drugs, the affair with Nick. He had ammunition that could destroy her life, and worse, It could cost her custody of Hazel. But going alone meant walking straight into a trap. Either way, she was trapped. What do you want, Caleb? She asked, her voice steadying despite the fear coursing through her. I want to discuss an arrangement, he replied smoothly. Meet me at the Sunshine Cafe in Oak Ridge. You know it. It's my sister's place. Come. Alone. Bring Hazel's documents. Birth certificate. Medical records. Everything. Why would I bring her documents? Lydia challenged, suspicion rising. You'll understand when you get here, Caleb said cryptically. And Lydia, don't make me wait. Don't call this number back. And don't try anything clever. Remember what's at stake. The line went dead before she could respond. Lydia stared at her phone, her mind reeling. She tried calling back, but as Caleb had warned, the number was disconnected. Panic surged within her, and for a brief moment, she considered reaching for the pill, bottle hidden in her purse. But then she remembered her promise. To Nick, to Hazel, to herself. She couldn't fall apart now. Not when Hazel needed her most. Taking a deep breath, Lydia returned to the group, her resolve hardening. She lied to Nick, telling him the call was from work, and convinced him to take her in-laws to the hospital, while she retrieved Hazel's documents from home. Once alone, she allowed herself a moment of weakness, retching in a nearby trash bin, to purge the remnants of the half pill she'd taken earlier. Then, with renewed determination, she drove toward Oak Ridge, following Caleb's instructions. As she parked outside the Sunshine Cafe, Lydia's heart pounded in her chest. Hazel was inside, laughing and playing. Unaware of the storm brewing around her, Caleb stood waiting, his polished appearance masking the monster beneath. Beside him, Maya watched silently, her expression unreadable. You're late, Caleb said, his voice dripping with mockery. Where's Hazel? Lydia demanded, her voice shaking despite her efforts to remain composed. She's safe, Caleb assured her, gesturing toward the indoor playground. For now. Lydia's gaze locked onto her daughter, relief washing over her at the sight of Hazel, happily building a sandcastle. But the feeling was fleeting. Caleb's next words sent a chill through her. We need to talk, Lydia. About Hazel. About us. About the truth. The tension between them crackled like electricity, each word loaded with unspoken threats and buried secrets. Lydia knew this conversation wouldn't end peacefully, but she also knew she had no choice. For Hazel's sake, she had to face Caleb and whatever truths he was hiding. As they moved toward the private room, Lydia's mind raced. What did Caleb really want? And how far was he willing to go to get it? The police officers stayed for another hour, asking Lydia detailed questions about Caleb's threats, the embezzlement, and her journey to recovery. Nick sat quietly by her side, holding her hand, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of emotions swirling around them. Hazel, exhausted from the day's events, fell asleep curled up on the hospital chair, clutching her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Bunny. The sight of her daughter, safe, breathing, alive, was enough to bring fresh tears to Lydia's eyes. When the officer finally left, promising updates on Caleb and Maya's legal proceedings, the room fell into a heavy silence. Lydia turned to Nick, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you. I thought if you knew everything, you'd leave. Nick shook his head, his expression soft but firm. Lydia, we've been through hell together. Addiction, therapy, building a life with Hazel. It wasn't easy, but we did it because we love each other. Did you really think I'd walk away now? After all we've overcome, his words broke something inside her, and she leaned into him, sobbing quietly as he wrapped his arms around her. For the first time in years, Lydia allowed herself to fully feel the weight of her mistakes and the grace of being forgiven. The next morning, Detective Wilson returned with more news. Caleb and Maya had been formally charged not only with kidnapping and assault, but also with conspiracy to commit fraud. It turned out that Caleb hadn't just planned to take Hazel. He'd forged documents to claim sole custody of her, using fake medical records and falsified birth certificates. The discovery sent chills down Lydia's spine. If Hazel had stayed with him even one night longer, Caleb might have disappeared with her entirely. As for Lydia's confession about the embezzlement, Detective Wilson assured her that her cooperation would be taken into account during sentencing. "You voluntarily came forward," he said, "and based on your therapist's report and documented rehabilitation, the court will consider those factors when determining your punishment. Still, the road ahead wouldn't be easy." Lydia faced jail time, fines, and the possibility of losing custody of Hazel, even temporarily. But she also knew she couldn't change the past without owning up to it. For once, she felt at peace with her decision to tell the truth, no matter how painful the consequences might be. In the weeks that followed, Lydia threw herself into preparing for court. Her lawyer worked tirelessly to gather evidence of her recovery, including letters from her therapist, testimonials from colleagues who vouched for her character, and even notes from June and Charles about what a devoted mother she'd become. Nick stood by her every step of the way, helping her practice her testimony and ensuring Hazel felt loved and supported, despite the chaos surrounding them. Hazel, for her part, adapted remarkably well to the changes. She adored spending extra time with her grandparents, especially since they spoiled her with baking sessions and bedtime stories. When she asked about Lydia going to a big meeting, Nick explained simply, "Mommy has to talk to some important people about something. She did a long time ago, but don't worry, she loves you very much, and she'll come back to us soon." Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. Lydia dressed carefully in a modest grey suit, her hands trembling as she adjusted her hair in the mirror. Nick squeezed her shoulder reassuringly before they headed to the courthouse. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Caleb sat across the aisle, flanked by his lawyer, his face unreadable. Maya wasn't present. She'd already accepted a plea deal in exchange for testifying against Caleb. When Lydia took the stand, her voice wavered at first, but as she recounted her story, the addiction, the theft, the fear of losing Hazel, and finally, the steps she'd taken to rebuild her life, she found strength in vulnerability. She spoke directly to the judge, her words raw and honest. "I made terrible choices, Your Honor, choices that hurt innocent people and almost cost me my daughter. But I'm here today because I want to make things right, not just for myself, but for Hazel. She deserves a mother who can show her what accountability looks like." The judge listened intently, occasionally nodding. After hours of deliberation, the verdict was delivered. Caleb was sentenced to 15 years in prison without parole, while Maya received 5 years for her role in the kidnapping. As for Lydia, the court recognized her efforts toward rehabilitation and sentenced her to 2 years of house arrest, along with mandatory community service and restitution payments to the employees affected by her crimes. Most importantly, the judge ruled that Hazel would remain in Lydia's care under supervised visitation until her sentence was completed. Walking out of the courthouse, Lydia felt lighter than she had in years. The battle wasn't over. She still had to fulfill her obligations and prove herself worthy of the second chance she'd been given. But she knew she wasn't alone. Nick, Hazel, June, and Charles were all waiting outside, their faces lighting up when they saw her emerge. "Mommy!" Hazel cried, running into her arms. Lydia knelt down, hugging her tightly as tears streamed down her face. "I love you so," Much, sweetheart, she whispered. More than anything in the world. That night, as Lydia tucked Hazel into bed, she paused to watch her daughter sleep. The innocence on Hazel's face reminded her why she'd fought so hard to protect this little girl, to give her a future free from fear. Lydia realized then that being a mother wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, even when you were scared, even when you weren't sure you could handle what lay ahead. Months later, as Lydia served her community service hours at a local shelter, she began mentoring women struggling with addiction and trauma. Sharing her story helped others find hope, and in turn, it healed parts of her she hadn't known were broken. Nick often joked that she was becoming a superhero, but Lydia knew better. She wasn't perfect. She never would be, but she was learning to embrace her flaws, to forgive herself, and to keep moving forward. For Hazel, for Nick, and for the person she was slowly becoming. And sometimes late at night, when the house was quiet and Hazel slept soundly in her bed, Lydia would sit by the window, staring at the stars. She thought about how far she'd come, how close she'd been to losing everything, and how love, not fear, had ultimately guided her choices. Life wasn't fair, and it certainly wasn't easy, but it was beautiful, and for the first time in a long time, Lydia believed she deserved to be part of it.